Hello everyone, I'm Jenny Redacted, and today I'm going to show you how to make dynamic objects in the Codex. We're not talking about dynamic terrain objects, interactable things like we find in monsters, but we're talking about more mundane stuff that we want to do on our maps to sort of spice it up. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is pull up some objects. I've already imported the images I've wanted and showcasing easy to hard things to do. The first and most simple, I think, is we're going to go ahead and make some foliage. So I've got this nice 2-minute tabletop asset here. We see it fits perfectly on a 2x2, so we're going to place it right there. And then we're going to start editing its properties. So we're going to go ahead and make it so that when heroes enter this patch of grass, they will be concealed and benefit from concealment. So we're going to right-click the object and go to... click on it, sorry. Click on the object. That'll open up its properties here. So we're going to see the core properties. It's on objects, right? Our players can see it. We see that it has a shadow. Bushes probably shouldn't have shadows. They're kind of going to be flat on the map, so we can turn that off. And then elevations rest on ground. Next thing we're going to do is going to give it a property. We're going to go down to gameplay and give it an aura. So we can now kind of visualize see the aura. It's affecting that one square. We're going to have the radius of that aura be 2. And now it will encapsulate the squares that the foliage is in. We're also going to toggle off display outlines. Since we don't want to see the aura, we can tell that this patch of grass is taking up this square. Next, we are going to hit edit aura and start giving it properties. So this is going to be a little bit, a lot. This is kind of starting into get of the weeds of programming and implementing stuff, but this one's going to be really, really simple. That's why we're starting with it. First thing we're going to do is change the name here. We're going to just call it Bush, as it's a bush. So this is what's going to pop up in characters' character menus when they see they're being affected by something. So they will see that it is called Bush. And it's really simple. We're gonna stick to apply creatures. So we don't have to edit literally anything. All we have to do is check this box. This is offer concealment. And if you want, this is my own personal bias, but I always make sure to keep the implementation button up to date, because seeing the reds on things that are very much implemented always bothers me. So it's gold because that's all we needed. We know that that works. We can hit close. I'm gonna go ahead and lock the object so that I don't move it around accidentally. And now we'll see that when our heroes enter into the bush, they will be concealed. If we open up the character panel, we can see here that they have the bush aura, so they are benefit from it and they are concealed. If you wanted to go a little further, if we have the object selected, we can open this up again. You could also include in the description, creatures in the bush have concealment. And then when we look at our hero and their character panel and they hover over the bush, they will see that is the rules. So in case they are wondering why they have concealment and see this strange aura, they can tell it's because they are in a bush. So that is an incredibly simple and easy one, starting out very, very simple. Now, I will point out, however, there is another way to do an effect like this, but it doesn't work with just placing objects, because now, before I forget, while we have this open underneath the core, if we go down to save to blueprint, this will update the blueprint of the one we have here, so that when we place another one, let's say if we put it right there, it will also have the properties already on it. So now, if you were making a battle map from scratch and you're like, this map is kind of empty, let me place some bushes down, you can quickly populate the map to add a bit of dynamic, terrain. Now there's things to move around with and interact with on the fight rather than just a big open area, which a lot of battle maps suffer from. Now the other way you can do this is by going to the map markup tool. I have moved my panels around since last video. You can do that by right-clicking any one of the panels and hitting rearrange and get to move them to either side of the screen wherever you want. I like to have my map making panels on the right side, since I usually am not using them during play. So we're gonna go to the map markup panel, which will open up here. I'll move it right here. You can see it. And we can see there's all sorts of stuff. So not only can we create walls and all sorts of stuff, we can make certain areas have different footstep sounds. Obviously, we can modify the elevation here, add props like chairs and light. But we can also go to zones and we can already see that it's registering that these things are picking up as concealment. But we can just simply click on the concealing zone, choose the rectangle tool, and draw a zone of concealment. So if we are on a map that already has bushes on it, we can just simply say, oh, this is a big old patch of bush, well, here, that's all concealment up there. Or maybe we switch it to difficult terrain and, oh, there's some rocks or whatever in this map we can highlight and drag there. So this is obviously the way to go if you are using a pre-built map that already has objects on it. But if you were to, but if you were to want to spruce up a map that doesn't have these properties on them, you're going to want to do this. Just thought I'd mention that in case you were wondering. There is a different way to do this specifically, but we are looking for... I am slowly building to an episode where I will teach you how to make maps from scratch within the Codex, and this is one of the really good ways to do it. All right, on to our next item as we have finished the bush. This will probably be a bit of a longer video, so I've most likely included timestamps in the bar, so if there's any item you specifically want to learn how to create, you can just go ahead and jump to it. Next, we're going to go ahead and make this is a next simple one. We're going to go ahead and make a tree. So I found this fun 2-minute tabletop asset. It's a tree. I like it a lot because it's got this like shadow of like where the top of the tree clearly is, and I really like that because having just the stumps around the battle map can be a little confusing sometimes. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on this. We're gonna go ahead and turn the shadow probably off. That might conceive a little bit there. And then we're gonna go ahead and make it a little bigger by using the scale. So we're gonna make sure that stump kind of takes up the inner square there. And then there we go. I'm gonna move the visibility of it to the floor so that the grid's over top of it. Just so people know that it's not above and doing so, because it is meant to be kind of really flush with the ground. So now it looks like that. The first thing we're gonna go ahead and do is add the solid property under gameplay. This will make it basically like a wall, and we can adjust what types. So first of all, it's gonna block movement. Because it is a full tree stump. It will block force movement because people can get pushed into the tree stump. It is going to block vision because it's a tall tree stump, and it will block your line of sight. And it will in fact block light because if you have a torch here, it won't be shining on that side. And it's too small to provide any cover, so we're not going to toggle that one on. Now, however, our asset, because it has this built-in shadow, if we go down here to manually set outline and hit edit path, we will see that this is what the Codex is registering to be the object shape, which is not what we want, because that means this entire section will be blocked off and people can't see or move through it. So we're going to simply take these pins. We can right click to delete or left click to add and drag them around. We're simply going to move them so that they only encapsulate the tree stump and try to get that like inner ring. Probably cut a couple there. Just get that one there real close. So I'm going to move it just a little bit out so that it makes sure that it knows that this is going to be the center. That should be good. Enough space. We're going to hit finish. And then now I'm going to go ahead and lock it. And we're going to go ahead and right click on our player token here and go ahead and hit show token vision to see what they see. So now we'll see they'll be able to completely see past the kind of shade shadow, but that tree is very much blocking their line of sight depending on where they are standing. And as we also get a goblin over here, and our null goes ahead and uses the knockback maneuver. Make that tier 3. You will see that if we force move someone, we can push them way through much this area where the shadow is, but if we try to push them into the stump, it will get stopped and it will take collision damage. So now it's working as intended. But there's one other aspect of the tree that we want to implement, and that is because a tree like this is most likely going to be climbed. So we're going to click on it one more time, and we're going to unlock it and give it the floor property. This is going to be pretty simple. We're going to go ahead and on platform change it to yes. It's going to be at 0 elevation because it's on the floor, but the climb height, we're going to say this tree is 4 squares high. We're going to say hit 4. And we'll see that we'll probably make it, this is like a straight tree, and I feel like you probably won't be able to climb it if you are not a skilled climber, so we're going to make it climbers only. So only people with a climb speed will be able to move vertically up the tree. This terrain also won't be concealment, difficult terrain, or water, and it won't move any tokens specifically. Now we're going to do the same thing, manually set outline, and edit the path. And I'm going to double check something just because I am uncertain, but do these paths. Okay, yes, these paths are different. So we're going to go to the floor, we're going to hit edit path, and instead of this one surrounding the tree stump, we're going to make it surround the squares one adjacent to the tree stump. So what this will do is, because this is the floor, right? It's not doing anything. All it does is that if someone is within these squares, and they can't be in this square because we gave it the solid property. So if they're in any adjacent square to the tree stump, they will be able to get prompted to climb. So for example, let's see, do these goblins have a climb speed? Yes, they do. So actually, before we start climbing, I'm going to go ahead and look at the floors and layers. Make sure you do this because the default floor size is often very small. You'll see the default floor size is 3, which is not a lot, especially if this map is outdoors. So we're going to make it 10, we'll say. And now we'll see, let's open up this goblin panel and pin it right here. We'll see that they don't have anything special going on, but if we move them adjacent to the tree, suddenly we will get prompted on ground and can click this little plus icon and have the goblin warrior start climbing. And we'll see they get to a max of 4 squares. Now your tree is climbable. And we'll see this human gnoll, who most likely does not have a climb speed, no such property comes up. But if we were to edit this person's character sheet and give them the ability to climb, we will see that they now have the same prompt and can climb up there as well. And rightfully, let's get them back up there. And rightfully so, reach this pesky goblin. Let's see, we'll make that a tier 3. You can see them get pushed, and since we're so high up on the tree, they will also fall. Oh, wow. That's funny. That is very, very humorous. Hesitant to... Alright, in this instance, which is a fun bug, I'm going to actively make a bug report because I think this is just a hilarious bug. I'm gonna go ahead and go up to feedback, hit bug report. I'm gonna include the screenshot. Climbing goblin was force moved away from climbing spot, remaining in the air without falling. We're gonna go ahead and hit submit on that bug report. Give it a sec to upload our stuff, and we will now get a ticket response if that bug is followed. But very hilarious. If I were to adjudicate this in a regular game, if you drag and hit, I think it is left alt, you can manually force move creatures. So see if I can just force move you in place. There you go. So by dragging and hitting left alt, I can just force move them in place, and then that will register them as having things. Let's see if I can recreate that bug. Let's get a different goblin over here, and let's see if I can get the goblin up. Let's get this goblin up the same height at climbing 4, and let's have the null knockback maneuver. Come on, guys. All right, push 2, and same thing. So we're visualizing that we're going to push them outwards, and they should fall straight down and take the damage. And when they fall, they are just still considered climbing and don't. That is incredibly funny. What if we move them? Because that's kind of like... No, that's still going out there. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what's helping that. But again, we can just hold them in place, holding left alt to force move them into the square they are in. And they'll fall. But alright, there is your tree. We can have our gnoll safely return to the ground. And we can move on to our next object. So for our next object, we are going to be making an acid pool. So this is an acid pool. It's a little bit bigger than I'd like. I think this image is not to be this great. Let's go ahead and just make a simple 2x2 acid pool. That seems about right. I can maybe rotate this image a little bit so it fits a bit better. Let's say it's right there. Oh, and also, sorry, before I forget, for our tree, let's make sure to scroll down on the core property and save to blueprint so that it is saved. Okay, on to the acid pool. So we're gonna make it that big. I think that works. This one's gonna be about as simple. We're gonna turn the shadow off because it's on the floor. This one's gonna be about as simple as the. Also gonna become the floor as well. Repeat myself. As simple. We're gonna give it an aura, and it's gonna be the exact same kind of property as the bushes, but there's another one. We're gonna also turn off display outline because we can clearly see where it is. We're gonna hit edit aura, and we're gonna say that this acid pool deals 1 acid damage to you for every square that you move through it. So we can see up here there already is a property for move damage. We can select the acid type and select 1. We can also change which movement will trigger it. So we could say that if you shift, right, non-shifting movement, if you shift through the acid pool, right, if you're very, very careful, then you don't take any damage. Now, I don't know how you carefully move through an acid pool, so we're going to keep that on all movement. We're going to change the name of the aura to acid pool. And this will be working correctly, so we can go ahead and upgrade that to gold implementation. Let's go to core and hit save to blueprint. Also, I didn't do it on the other ones, but you'll see this is the default name of the asset here, name, but you can click on that and change that. So I can change that to acid pool. And then when I save that to blueprint, it will, it should update the name. If not, you can save to a new blueprint to create a new object with the properties you have edited. So like if I say I wanted to make an acid pool, but I wanted to make a big acid pool, I could say big acid pool, and go to the scale and make it way bigger. Let's have that be a 3x3. Yeah, that feels good. Let's go down so it's like perfectly fitting in the box here. Maybe like right there. That's good. And if we go to the aura, we can hit display outline to be sure that we're looking at, then hit change it to radius 3. And then boom, it's working as intended. We can toggle that off. And we know the property works, so we can scroll down and hit save to new blueprint. And then if we look over on our objects, directly next to the old one, we'll see the regular pool of acid and a duplicate pool of acid. Looks like the names weren't changed. I think you kind of need to edit them here to get the name changed correctly. So I'll do that here. Acid pool. Confirm. Edit the other acid pool. It's gonna be big acid pool. Big acid pool. Okay, now we will see if our little test subjects here, the Fury, let's use the arrow keys here and move into this terrain. And we'll see we will take 1 damage for every square we move through. And even more so, when you are clicking and dragging your character, if you end up passing through the spaces, the movement will warn you there in red text of how much damage you're going to take. But yeah, that is the acid pool. Very, very simple and very quick and easy. Let's see here. Okay. Can't tell you. There you go. Good. Log it for a sec. All right. Moving on to our next object. So for our next object, we're going to go ahead and make a piece of dynamic terrain that I think is going to be very, very common on many, many battle maps and all sorts of things, and that is the Brazier. We know some of these from the first room of the Delian tomb, a little fiery pit that gives off not only light but also does extra fire damage when you get pushed into it. So this is going to be relatively easy to do here in the Codex. So we're going to go ahead and let's change the name ahead of time. Let's call it Brazier. It probably also won't update. I might have to just update it here. We're going to scale it up so that it kind of fills up the entire square there. Yeah, that feels good. Same thing, that'll be on objects. Height, shadows, elevation. Yep. Next, we're going to go ahead and give it the gameplay. This should be the light property. Now it'll emit light. You can go ahead and change the kind of style of light that it gives off, or specifically the color. Like if we wanted to give off red light, we could. White's the default. It just kind of paints things. Let me go ahead and turn the lights down so you can see what's going on here. So we can go over to floors and layers, or rather the additional time of daylighting. We can see because we're on outdoors, right? If we look at our floors and layers, we're on the ground floor. If we were to make a new floor, let's say let's right click the roof and say set as ground floor. Now the floor we're actually on, right, not up here but down here where we're putting all our stuff, is considered beneath the ground, so it's underground. And when you're underground, instead of doing the sun lighting, you get this slider to see how dark it is. So if we turn it down really dark, we can see that our brazier is giving off the light. We right click our null to see their vision, and this is what they see, right? Everything's dark as fuck, but the brazier is giving off a little light. So we can keep editing the brazier. We can say, well, it should probably give off kind of like a reddish orange light because it is fire. Right here. So let's kind of go like a little orangey, and then you want to go, I think, darker with the colors. So like down here, it's kind of like mungy, reddish brown color. And then let's go ahead and increase the radius so it's a bit bigger. Let's decrease the intensity so it's not as bright. And then we can increase the flicker, which I'm going to turn it all the way up so you can see what it's actually doing, which is kind of flickering in and out, but obviously way too much is kind of like really distracting. So if you just give it a little tiny bit, it feels a bit more like natural firelight. So let's go ahead and look at what it looks like for our heroes. And it is still way too dark. Let me turn the light up a little. I think the color we chose was too dark. Let me go bright orange is the move. I think that's too bright. Lighter pale. Check that out. Yeah, that works. So it's still pretty dark in here. But we turn it a little up, and then now it's kind of giving off some nice bit of light. So that's the step one. Step two is doing the same thing we did with the tree stump, which is making it solid. So that you can't move through it, but you can get force pushed into it. So block movement, yes. Block force movement, yes. So this won't block your vision because it's usually only like, waist high. So we're going to change no. And it gives off light, so it wouldn't make sense for it to block light. So we're also going to turn that off as well. We can also hit edit path to get it, but it's, tracks it pretty well, and that's going to be good enough for this. We don't need to mess with the path, but we could, set it to the squares if we wanted to, but not important. Now we'll see simply as well if I go over here, if we try to path through the object, our goblin will have to go around it because we can't move through it. And if we were to be force moved, similarly, if we drag the goblin and hit left alt, we can just force move them. They will register that this is a solid object and get stuck and take some collision damage. But we want to do the fire damage, right? So last property, we're going to go ahead and give it the, it's going to be, I believe, the targetable property. So the targetable property allows this object to be targeted by abilities that target objects. So what this means is we can say attackable. So this is what that will mean, is it will be a target of attacks. Like, so how many abilities in draw steel say one creature or object, right? This allows you to not only set up the properties we'll use in a second for the collision damage, but make it so that certain of your objects on the battlefield can actually be destroyed, which can play into the tactics and the dynamic terrain of the battlefield, right? If your enemies keep pushing you into this brazier, the brazier is going to take some damage too, because that's how force movement works. So eventually it will break and you won't be able to use it anymore. We're going to go ahead and turn on custom collision. We can also turn that off, I believe. I think we can I think no collision damage is for all creatures. So if I were to force move the goblin into it, yeah, so that way, if you don't want, I don't know, if you had an object that was like a sponge or something that would stop characters from being force moved into it from taking damage, you could do that if you wanted to. But we're going to go ahead and turn that off. We're going to hit custom collision behavior, and we're going to go ahead and hit edit behavior. So this is going to look a little crazy, but this is what making an ability in the Codex looks like. We'll get into this screen and more of it in future videos where I show you how to make custom abilities for characters. Right now, we're going to ignore pretty much everything it says. We're going to switch it to gold implementation because it works. We're going to ignore everything and go straight down to the effects tab. Here we can click on the bottom, add behavior, and we're going to want to click on the behavior that says damage. For the role title, we're going to go ahead and put Brazier so that it appears in chat as Brazier, so that in case you're confused of why you're taking damage. For the role, we're going to put the amount, which is going to be 2. We'll say 2 fire damage. And to make it fire damage, just change damage type to fire. That's all we need to do here. We can close this window. Let's go ahead and change this Brazier stamina. Let's say 10 stamina is pretty fine, right? So it's a metal cauldron, pretty hard to break by just moving someone into it, but if you were to attack it to want to get rid of it, you can probably take it out in one hit. Let's go back to core and hit save to blueprint, so our future Braziers will also have these properties. And let's lock it and see the results. Our human null steps up to the plate for another game-breaking knockback maneuver. A push 2 will launch the goblin into the Brazier, taking 2 fire damage and 4 collision damage. If we open up the action log panel here, we can see that our Brazier had a trigger to deal some damage. Now, this kind of looks a little ugly. The name, as I said, did not update. So if we wanted to clean this up a little bit, let's pin this so we can see it. Go to our objects tab and edit this. Yeah, I think I need to go to the name here. Change it to Brazier. And then we can edit targetable, go down to edit behavior. And on this ability page, we can change the name. We'll say fire damage. Simple enough. Then we are going to go ahead and, or I guess since we see here, it doesn't actually say what it does. We can kind of hover over it. Let's go ahead and change that further. Let's get a little further. So let's say 2 fire damage, and for the effect before power roll, either of these works if there's no power roll. We'll say a target forced moved into the Brazier takes 2 fire damage. And now that'll show up here on the display. And now if we try that again, right, knockback maneuver our goblin here. They get smacked in. And we'll see, oh, it looks like this specific Brazier didn't update, but we'll see that it says 2 fire damage ability, and we hover over it, it'll explain what it does. Let's see if placing another one will fix the name. Let's delete this one. I guess it's just force move our poor null into it. Yep, it looks like the name change did not save. Oh, because I didn't hit save, that's my bad. Let's do that real quick. 2 fire damage. A target force moved into the Brazier takes 2 fire damage. Boop. Now go back to core. Now save to blueprint. Force move him again. Brazier, 2 fire damage. Perfect. Now we know, and anyone following the action log can keep track of what happened and why. That is how you make a Brazier, which gives off light, can be force moved into, and deals fire damage upon contact. On to our next object. Our next object is going to be a really good dynamic piece of terrain that can fit in pretty much anywhere, and that is a table. So this table's looking a little small. Let's go ahead and click on that to scale it up. Let's make it about as big as 1 square. Or even, I think, kind of specifically, let's make it 2 squares wide. I think this asset is good enough to hit there. Let's get it about that big right there. Just so enough that it kind of looks like it's filling up that section there. Now that I'm looking at it, yeah, so it's kind of like a little low res. Also, let me turn the lights back on. It's kind of dark. Hard to see. Yeah, the asset's a little low res. Maybe we stick it to just one square. I think that's the thing about the Codex is you can kind of get so close and look at so many things that you really start to notice if assets are low res. The Codex very much supports very high quality images. But yeah, okay, let's say we have an overturned table. So what we want to do is have this overturned table apply cover for people standing behind it. Now that I'm looking at it again, I will make it 2 squares. Just, I don't care if it's low res, it makes way more sense to be 2 squares. Like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to do what we've done on all of our previous objects. We're going to go ahead and add the solid property. Let's go ahead. Yeah, gameplay solid property. We're going to say it blocks. I'm going to say this doesn't block movement because I think it's pretty easy to vault over a knocked over table, right? It's not too high, easy enough for you to move across, right? Something like the Brazier you couldn't because there's fire on it, so probably don't want to do that and would be too hot to touch, but a table, no problem. Vault that like an action movie star. It's also only a table, so it's not high enough to block vision or light, but it does provide cover. We can do cover 50%, and that'll work for what we want. Now, for this one specifically, we're going to go ahead and hit Edit Path, and that will show the kind of layout here of the table. I'm gonna kind of clean it up a little bit and make it much more of a rectangle shape than kind of what it is right now. And I might even get specific and say that the legs, because technically there's holes here, right? If we think about it logically, those don't provide cover. So if there's ever a line of effect that is drawn and it, for whatever reason, goes through this way or even cuts like this corner here, it won't actually get stopped by the cover because it is not. It is going through the gap in the legs and not actually the wooden part that gives it the cover. So we're going to say, hey, finish. And then now we're going to give it the targetable property because, you know, any good cover can be destroyed. So we're going to say this wooden table has 5 stamina because it's only made of wood, right? It's not too durable. And similarly, we're going to go ahead and hit edit path. And we're actually going to make this targeting area a little bit bigger. And the reason for that is because we don't want... I'm going to do straight up this. And the reason for this is because we actually don't want our ranged attacks that are going to be looking for a line of effect to draw a line through the cover so that if you attack the table, it will actually proc as cover. Just for that example, I'm going to go ahead and actually, I will make the path for this really, really tiny. So this is kind of like what the hitbox of the object is going to be. And I'll show you what it looks like if you have this with cover. I'll have our tactician here use a ranged free strike. And you see if they target the table, because it is drawing a line through that cover, it will treat it as cover and we'll see the Bane automatically get applied. But we'll see it is working as intended, as if we hit that ranged free strike and try to target the goblin, we will also have cover there. And then also, if you didn't know this, underneath the panel that shows up here, you can toggle between targeting creatures, specifically objects, or creatures and objects. So, as we can see, attacking the table by itself is giving the table cover. We don't want that, so for targetable, we're going to go ahead and edit the path to have this be much further out from where the cover is granting the table so that we don't make that mistake. Say finish, and then now we should not get a Bane on cover. Oh, well, objects. Okay, it's still doing cover. Let's see if I can't paint the solid bit a little smaller. About that much there. Targetable. Much further out. It might also just be going on the center bit that is giving it cover, and thus it will not. It still won't work. There we go. See, now it is no longer giving its cover. We made it small enough. But if we see that if we target the goblin, it's still drawing a line. Let's see here. Let's line as many goblins up as we can to see what or what not gives us cover. Let's stand these goblins up. See, this goblin's not cutting, you know, we're kind of cutting across the table, so no cover there. These two, this one has cover, but this one, we actually have a corner to corner. We can see our token moving to adjudicate. and there's just barely enough space on the right side of that table for us to avoid it. And obviously this goblin is not behind the cover. But for example, if we were, one square over, we would not be able to avoid that goblin, but we could avoid the cover on that goblin by peeking around. Now, a fun note about the cover is that if you're adjacent to the cover, when you make ranged strikes through it, and let me actually not do monsters because that doesn't make any sense. Let's swap positions here. If we're behind the cover and we make a range free strike, actually, let me get the goblin out here so we don't get the bane. If you make a range free strike when you're adjacent cover, over top of it, you won't get a bane because you're hiding behind the cover. So that would be antithetical if this gave you a bane. So when you're adjacent to cover, you can just shoot right over it. You can see that works for both sides of the cover. And you see like the another little peak there. But okay, now we have a table, and it's got 5 stamina, and obviously when it is destroyed, it is deleted. And then similarly, because we still made it a solid object, if we were to force move this goblin, we can push them into the table, and that does damage to the table. A really fun thing about this, and I've kind of seen this brought up before, is that if you're playing someone with the rapid fire kit or even the double strike kit, right? If you have no good targets for that second attack, you can choose creatures or objects and shoot not only an object but also a creature. So you can kind of 2-in-1 get rid of a piece of cover and attack an enemy, so that that cover piece is no longer used. And I unfortunately think I just deleted that object before I had the chance to save it. So, and you just hit save before you destroy it and delete it forever. I think I can save it. No, I can't. Okay, cool. Gone forever. But yeah, save it. And that is a flipped over table. And you can do that for all sorts of things, right? If you wanted to do that for a, like sandbags, like proper cover, tinier stuff like that, you can make it exactly the same way. Okay, for our last object of the video, I know this video has been very long, we're going to make probably my favorite object that I've ever made, which is going to be an exploding barrel. I think exploding barrels are the key to what makes a really good draw steel map, because who doesn't love seeing red barrels in video games and waiting for enemies to run right past them before shooting them perfectly and blowing them up, dealing a bunch of damage and taking out a bunch of enemies in one go. So we're going to go ahead and say exploding barrel. We can see here the barrel image is quite small. We're going to scale it up a little bit in this main thing here, just to edit the base properties. That's good enough. We can hit confirm. And then now we can start placing the barrel object. So let's place the barrel down and start editing it. So pretty much all of this stuff can be kept. Let's start adding properties. So first thing we're going to do is going to add solid, because it is a barrel. So it's probably going to get easily vaulted over, right? It's just a barrel. It's not too high, so it doesn't block movement. We can walk past it. It does block force movement. You can shove people into it. And it's, again, too low to block vision or block light. And it's only a barrel, so it's probably not providing you that much cover because it's kind of rounded on the edges and, it might move and it's hard to stand behind. Let's go ahead and move on to the next property, which is going to be targetable. So this property is going to be attackable. We've got the path, that's fine. We're going to give this barrel 10 stamina, as it's going to be a bit of a challenge to get through this one. Not that the barrel is very durable, but we don't want it to be exploding instantly. So we're going to go ahead and we're actually going to click on the object sheet. Now this is going to be pretty big. So the object sheet is going to basically be a monster character sheet, but for an object, and we can start giving this sheet specific properties. This is probably going to be the most complicated thing I show off today, and I'll go more into it in other videos describing how to make custom features, but this is kind of a little preview. So we're going to give this barrel a triggered action that when it takes damage that reduces it to 0 stamina, it will explode. And we can get really specific about that. I think for an object like this, you don't want it to just be when any damage reduces it to 0, because in logically, sure, if you break a barrel full of gunpowder, maybe you hit a spark and it explodes, but more realistically, that damage has to be fire damage. So we're going to look to make a trigger of that when this barrel takes fire damage that reduces it to 0 stamina, it explodes. So we're going to go over to the features tab and we're going to hit this plus button to create a new feature. We're going to hit edit and start editing it. We don't really need to give this property a name because it's not going to show up anywhere. But let's go ahead and click add modifier. We're going to go ahead and click on triggered ability and hit edit ability to start modifying it. So we are going to give this a name because I believe this probably will pop up in the action log. So we're going to call it exploding barrel. And we're going to go ahead and we see the trigger event is already on take damage. But if we were to hit change, we can see all manner of things that triggers can trigger on. But take damage is what we want. The trigger subject is going to be self, which is the barrel. It is always active and does not require a condition, so we can ignore all this and go to triggers only when. So we want this to only trigger when the damage that is being taken is fire damage and has reduced the barrel stamina to 0. So let's start off with the damage. That's going to be very simple. We're just going to go ahead and write in damage type. And then we're going to go ahead and do equal, and then in quotes, fire. We'll see over on the right, instant feedback of our implementation of whether it is working or not. We'll see the reader has changed to when you take damage, if the damage type equals fire, which, is a little code speak, but is, when the damage is fire. So already off to a good start. But we also want another stipulation. So we're going to go ahead and simply say, and we're going to go ahead and say self, which is the person this trigger is using, dot, to add on a secondary thing, stamina. So what this will read for is our own stamina. And we're going to say greater than, less than, or equal to 0. Click that. And we'll see it says when you take damage, if the damage type equals fire and your stamina is at most 0. So it's a little wanky, little janky in how it's written, but this is what we want, and it's usually a good thing. And we'll see here the only issue is that we haven't put any behaviors, which we will do now. So let's move over to the setup. So this is going to occur automatically. It's not going to prompt the barrel, right? It's not going to take any actions. And the target type is going to be a burst because this is an explosion. We're going to say that the barrel explodes in a 2 bursts. So if we hit range 2, that will target anything within 2 squares, and we'll see affects creatures. We'll say creatures and objects because they probably blow up nearby barrels as well, maybe causing a chain reaction. And of course, because this is a exploding barrel, it is not going to participate in friendly fire or the lack thereof, and it will target our heroes if they are in fact too close to the barrel. So even more tactics and possible things to avoid. Next, we're going to move to our effects. We'll see a similar thing to the ability we did previously, and we're going to do something pretty similar. Now, there are 2 ways to go about it. I think it's funnier if the barrel makes a power roll. So we're going to go ahead and say, because we could just do the damage and say it's a flat amount, and maybe it's like, a rolled amount or just flat, but I think it's funnier if the barrel has some effects. So we're going to say we're going to hit ability power roll. Now, what was actually more likely is we're going to have the targets of the barrel explosion make a resistance roll. So we're going to change roll type from ability to reactive test. The attribute's going to be agility, because that's pretty standard for avoiding an explosion. And we're going to write in the power roll here what happens on each tier. So if you roll a 1, let's say you take 10 fire damage, right? If we just write out 10 fire damage. Then let's say on a tier 2, you take 5 fire damage. But on a tier 1, there is no effect. You manage to avoid the exploding barrel. And that's all you need for one of these power tables. Denivarius has done a lot of work on the parsing of the power table rolls. So this, as written, will work exactly how we want it. We don't need to do anything else. Now, let's go ahead and hit close. We can change this to gold. Actually, let me go back just because it's going to bother me. Hit gold on this as well. Hit confirm. Let's change the name to Exploding Barrel just so we remember what this effect is. Hit confirm. We can now close out of the object sheet, go back over to core, save to blueprint, and now our barrel is an exploding barrel. Let's go ahead and place one barrel down into this giant group of goblins here, right? Let's place a goblin right here. So there's a meaty amount of goblins in the area, but let's go ahead and do some tests here. Let's reassure our tests here, and let's put down 2 barrels. The first barrel, we're going to have the High Elf Tactician attack and deal damage to. We're going to shoot this barrel here. And we're going to go ahead and just set it to the 10 damage on tier 3, which is how much the barrel has. We'll see here, we hit accept, and the barrel dies, no effect, because it wasn't fire damage. Let's go ahead and grab our handy dandy Fire Elementalist from the Dealing 2 pre-gens. And then just to show that a hero will be affected by this too, let's move our poor Null over there. Let's go ahead and select the Polder Elementalist and use Viscous Fire. Viscous Fire only targets creatures, which is very funny. Bifurcated Incineration does her element. How much does that do? Oh, our poor Polder doesn't do enough damage. Okay, let's do something really simple here just to get the damage up. Let's go ahead and just make the Polder's reason 6. But yeah, +6 so that they have more damage on hurl element. Change it to fire damage, and let's roll against that barrel. And then now our minimum damage will kill the barrel, and we should see, boom. Okay, so it's freaking out because I have a million things that just happened, but because I'm controlling all these tokens and the null, but all of these goblins and the null have automatically rolled their resistance rolls. In game, all the players would be prompted, and this would most likely be automated as well from the director side, so you don't have to see roll after roll after roll from everything. It automatically does it. So we see all of the goblins, nearly all of them except for one, got a tier 1, and our null got a tier 2. We can allow them to reroll by clicking these buttons, but otherwise we can hit proceed and fire damage all around from the exploding barrel. So that is that brings us to the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed making these very fun and dynamic objects you can include in your Codex battle maps to really turn things up. There's all manner of fun stuff you can do, and by saving these objects and storing them for later, you can always bring them out on a battle map to spice things up. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments, and anywhere else you see these of what more you want to see from the Codex. There's so many things to do. I have so many ideas, and I've been hearing from the community, but I want to know your feedback. I want to know your thoughts. What would you like to see in the Codex? See fleshed out, see longer videos, shorter videos. I know this video is pretty long. I hope the timestamps helps, and thank you all if anyone made it this long. I will see you guys in the next video. I've been Jenny Redacted. Have a good night.